Remember when I said they're turning the internet into an ID checkpoint? Well, I've been reading comments everywhere on my videos, Reddit, X, and YouTube, and the same suggestions continue to pop up, like going offshore, using decentralized platforms, or even the dark web. And then I realized something, that these aren't real solutions, they're proof that the system is working exactly as designed. Let me show you what's really happening. But first, quick recap on what's actually being built. We're not just seeing random age verification pop up here and there. We're we're watching a coordinated ecosystem take shape. What do I mean by that? This is how it works, right? Governments pass the laws and set the mandates, regulators enforce them with massive fines, platforms implement the ID checks and face scans in order to stay compliant. Then you'd have your payment processors like Visa, MasterCard, Stripe, and PayPal. They would act as financial enforcers, threatening to cut off revenue if companies and content creators do not play ball, right? And then a whole new industry of age verification companies like Yoti and I mean Persona, are basically cashing in by supplying the biometric tools. And all of this is being sold under we're protecting kids. The end result is the casual, relatively anonymous internet we used to have, where you could simply click I'm 18 to access content, is being replaced by a highly identifiable, trackable, and controllable system. That was pretty much the focus on my last video about how this entire ecosystem works together and the results of that. But today, I want to talk about the part that almost no one is addressing. Um, what happens when regular people start resisting and looking for a way out? This leads me to the displacement effect, because if the mainstream internet is becoming more invasive, filled with ID checks, face scans, and constant tracking, people are going to leave. And they're leaving in big numbers. But where are they going? They're going to offshore unregulated sites, fringe platforms, private Telegram groups, and shady content behind VPNs. The evidence is clear. After these age verification laws hit, VPN usage exploded with spikes over 1,000% or more in places like the UK, Florida, Texas, Utah, and Australia. People aren't complying with the new rules, they're simply fleeing the mainstream. But this is where it gets dangerous, because these alternative spaces are objectively less safe. They're full with malware, malicious ads, fake verification scams, and infected downloads. The security is weak, so data breaches are common, sometimes linking people's real identities to their private browsing habits, which leads to sextortion and blackmail. And on top of that, there's almost no moderation. That means higher chances of running into preds and genuinely harmful content. This is the cruel irony. Policies that were sold to us as protecting children are actually pushing both adults and minors into more and more dangerous parts of the internet. This is creating what many experts now call a two-tier internet. Tier 1 would be the sanitized, heavily surveilled mainstream, where everything is verified and tracked, and tier 2 is the wild, unregulated fringe, where privacy exists but safety does not. And millions of regular people are being pushed from tier 1 into 2. So naturally, when people see this happening, they start looking for ways out. And like I said, the trend that I'm noticing is just move to decentralized platforms, use offshore VPNs, self host everything, and just go to the dark web. And at first, I thought these were legitimate but technical workarounds. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized something really important, that these aren't realistic solutions for regular people. Let's be so for real. Decentralized platforms sound great in theory, but they're complicated to use, have way less content, and will get pressured by payment processors if they become popular. And that's the last thing we need. offshore VPNs, many are untrustworthy, some log your activity, some are outright scams, and governments are already starting to restrict or block them. Self hosting requires technical skills, money, and constant maintenance that 99% of you will never do. And the dark web. Mate, if you're telling people to go to one of the most dangerous places on the internet just to escape surveillance, what are we doing? Here's the pattern, right? Every single solution demands technical experience that most people don't have, which would force them to accept high risk and push them into less convenient spaces. That is not freedom. That is not a workaround. It's proof that the system is working exactly as designed. So here's the thing, regular people should not be pushed out of the normal internet. And I'm not some privacy expert or some conspiracy theorist. I'm just a regular person who wants a less surveilled internet, one where we can still have basic privacy without having to jump through hoops or hand over our ID for everything. But right now, the mainstream web, the one that most of us use every day, is turning into a verified, heavily tracked space. You have to hand over your ID, scan your face, and accept constant tracking just to browse or watch legal content. This is creating the two-tier internet. If you comply, you stay in tier one, the clean, sanitized, but heavily monitored mainstream. If you don't, you get pushed into tier two, the riskier, unregulated fringe. Normal law abiding adults who just want some privacy, whether it's for, yes, adult content, political views, health information, or anything censored, are being forced to choose between surveillance or danger. And again, the deepest irony is these policies that are sold to us as protecting children are actually making the internet less safe for everyone by driving people into higher risk environments. And when the only way to escape are these complicated technical workarounds or going to the dark web, those aren't real choices. That's a system designed to make resistance extremely difficult. This ID checkpoint internet is being built and enforced through laws, platforms, and payment processes. And again, I'm just saying, pay attention to what happens next, because once this infrastructure is fully in place, it won't be easy to undo.